Call this meeting to order. Welcome to House Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, Cultural Resources. Go ahead and we'll start with roll call.
Representative Campbell.
Here.
Representative Connolly. Here. Representative Harshman.
Here.
Representative Jarvis.
Here.
Representative Provenza.
Here.
Representative Storer.
Here.
Representative Thayer.
Here.
Representative Worf.
Here.
Chairman Byron.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started here. My script is short. Be nice or leave. Be kind. Be civil. Work through the chair. We will remind you of that. Please silence your phones. My committee as well. We have some work to get done today, so let's go ahead and I think most people in here are probably here to talk about snowmobiles. So with that noted, we're going to start with House Bill 4, which was a committee bill. Came out of the interim committee, and I am going to go ahead and just right here from the chair, a lot of coughing going on upstairs, so let's keep our hands clean. I'm going to go ahead and introduce this to the committee and work through it, and would certainly appreciate Representative Storer if she has any memories, because she was on that committee in the interim. But we're going to go through House Bill 4, snowmobile registration user fees. Committee, if you go to page 3, line 12, we've gone back and forth and around on antique. We had a lot of testimony about it, and this is where we landed, at least 30 years old. If you go on to page 4, lines 14 through 23, you can see that the registration fee goes from 35 to 50. For resident, for commercial, 105 to 150. There's that antique mention at lines 21 and 22. And then hopping over another mention on the antique on page 6, lines 6 and 7. Note that that antique stays the same in-state and out-of-state. There's a lot of discussion about that in interim. Hopping back up, page 6, lines 1 through 4. The non-resident, not exempt under subsection F of this section goes from 35 to 70 for that user fee. And folks, just for your knowledge, if you're not familiar with these are the stickers we put on that help support our wonderful grooming operations. That's a very quick summary of the bill. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for Representative Storer. You were on that committee with me. You have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just take everybody's attention to the fiscal note that clarifies that this creates a $25 registration fee for antique snowmobiles, increases resident snowmobile fees by $15, and increases non-resident snowmobile fees by $35, and increases commercial snowmobile fees by $45, and provides the revenue as estimated. So the committee did discuss different ways to increase the snowmobile fees. We landed here and decided that increasing all of these made sense. It provides enough revenue to continue to groom the trails that we have now, and will provide a longer period of time before we have to rethink revenue increases again. Wyoming is one of the best places to go snowmobiling in the world, I think. And so we felt like this was a reasonable approach to both raising resident and non-resident and the commercial fees. And there was support from the industry, I think, unanimously as well. So that's all I have to say.
Appreciate that, Representative Storer. Yes, support unanimously. We're going to go ahead and open up to public comment. Any other electeds, state, local, otherwise in the room that would like to? Representative Jones, or Senator Jones, excuse me. My head's in the right spot. Welcome to TRW. Please, for everyone, introduce yourself. Thank you for being here.
Mr. Chairman, Stacey Jones, Senate District 13. Thank you all for hearing this bill. We have worked on it quite a bit in the interim. this is a user fee. So I think that's very, very important. And I'm a snowmobiler. My family is a snowmobiler. We're for this. We think it's responsible for us to raise this fee to try to keep up with the fees associated with maintaining our trails, marking the trails, signage, the staff to coordinate all these things. I think it's important to note that tourism for snowmobiles is very important to the state of Wyoming. The last survey I could find was a 2021 study, and I believe it was done by UW. And they said snowmobilers contribute over $255 million to our economy every year. So that's a large number, and I guess I just want to say that my club, myself, we are for this increase in fees.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Appreciate all your work on the interim TRW committee. Senator Jones brought a lot of wealth to that discussion and knowledge, and I appreciate that. Any questions, committee, of Senator Jones? Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So based on your experience in the history in this, it looks like that we've had pretty significant uptick just in use. We have more people using the trails, more people accessing those trails, and while the use has increased, the revenue to maintain and take care of those has not. So there's quite a bit of a gap between those two, which looks to be why this has been proposed and might help bridge that gap.
It's true. I think year after year, the sport of snowmobiling just increases. So many people flock here to ride our great trails. We usually have awesome snow. Sounds like this weekend is going to provide us with a little bit more of that in some of these areas. So yes, it's very important.
Appreciate that, Representative Campbell, that question. Committee, any other questions for Senator Jones? Seeing none, thank you so much. She has been patient. We have been kicking this bill down the road. State Parks, come on and fill the seat. Introduce yourselves for Zoom land in our committee. Great to see so many familiar faces.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Dave Glenn, Director of State Parks and Cultural Resources, and with me is Deputy Director Chris Floyd, excuse me, and our Trails Manager, Forrest Kaminga. I'm going to start off just going very brief, and then I'll punt it over to the pros here. As Senator Jones said, it is a $255 million industry. If you look at communities of Du Bois right now, I can tell you there's nothing but Midwest license plates, filling hotels, eating at restaurants there, and doing their thing. And a lot of communities in the West and in Wyoming rely on that. Costs have gone up 40% since 2014, the cost of us to do business. We haven't grown staff. We haven't done anything. Well, we have done a lot, but we have not grown staff. An example is to purchase a Snowcat. In 2014, it was $195,000. Forrest just bought one the other day, and it was $305,000. So a 50% increase since 2014, and that's the last time we increased fees. The other thing Senator Jones talked about was the user fee. This is a really good example of pay to play. People want groomed trails. They put the sticker on their snowmobile. Everything is other funded. That money goes to Forrest and his 16 people that go out and groom trails, put up signs, put up snow stakes, put up safety shelters, do all these things to provide those services to those folks. And we're at a crossroads right now. We either reduce services or we get a fee increase and actually continue to provide the services that we're providing now. And with that, I would stand for any questions, and if not, pass it off to Mr. Floyd.
Thank you, Director Glenn. Committee, any questions? Representative Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just have a question. How many miles of group trails do you do?
Thank you, Representative Connolly, for that question. Mr. Floyd.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Connolly, we have about 2,600 miles of trails that we groom, and with repeated groomings, that comes out to about 80 to 90,000 miles of grooming work each year.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd. Any other questions, committee, of Deputy Director Floyd? I'm sure you have some more info for us. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So just to get a little more detail without going too far into the weeds, we're experiencing seeing right now this year a shortfall of $400,000. We have an operating account that increases and decreases as we collect revenue and expend funds to groom the trails and provide other services. So that's how far we were under this year. That account usually sits around 3 million. So you can see that inflation is starting to eat into that. And the last increase we had was in March of 2014. So it's been 11 years since we've had an adjustment to the fees. And as the director alluded to, we're getting to a point where we can get through this season, fine, the next few months, of course. And then at the end of this year, 2025, 2026 season, we're going to have to find a way to save some money. We may not purchase one of those snowcats, for example, that we normally do each year. Usually actually purchase 2 a year, just to save money. This season after that, the 26-27 season, that's where at this current rate, we would have to start reducing groomed trails and making some tough decisions there. And we're trying to avoid that. As the director said, we've heard from folks in the snowmobile world who are in support of this, and I believe there's some online who want to talk a little bit about that. And they've expressed a willingness to pay what they need to pay to keep this program going. We predicted we're going to need about $750,000 to set us up for several years to come, a little bit more of a longer term thing. So maybe we could go another decade without having to come up here again, as Representative Storer mentioned. And so the bill as it is right now would do that. It would, of course, bring resident fees up $15, $35 to $50, create a new category for non-residents, which doesn't exist right now. It's $35 for both. That rate would be $70, and increase the commercial rate, and then create that antique snowmobile decal program. And that's a one-time purchase of $25 for the life of that vehicle, as long as it's with that owner. If it changes ownership, you have to buy another one. But that's the attempt there, is to bring in people to attend these antique snowmobile events, which are great, economic activity generators for our state. If someone's coming in just for one day for an event like that, they don't mind paying $25 to get their decal, but they may balk a little bit at paying the regular non-resident rate for a one-off thing. So you've got a line graph and a chart there that was provided to you that kind of breaks down the revenue that be generated by this bill. And the line graph also just sort of gets you a little bit of detail there about the revenues that have been coming in and how steady they've been, but then also how significant those cost increases have been. And it's not just the snowcats and equipment, but we contract out a lot of our services. We have a lot of folks under contract who provide grooming services for us, and their costs have gone up significantly as well, north of 50% in the last decade. So we're just trying to keep the program going, and that's what this bill would allow us to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Deputy Director Floyd, for all that great information. Committee, any questions? Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on page 8 of this bill, it does have an effective date of July 1, 2025, which is this summer, correct? So these fees would actually, then apply to this winter, and gives you guys enough time to make those adjustments. And
Mr. Chairman,
Deputy
Representative
Director Floyd,
Campbell,
go ahead.
we would have time to adjust. It would be okay.
Thank you for the question, Representative Campbell. Committee, any other questions? Representative Storer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Floyd. Remind us why the increase in expense in 2023, and then why it went back down.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Storer, thank you. That was to purchase the Trails building. We had been renting that building for many, many years, and the owner of that building was looking to sell it. And so we were at a crossroads there. We had to make a decision. Do we purchase this building, or do we run the risk of a new landlord and what that could lead to? So we made that investment, and that obviously did affect our bottom line there. But we are also generating revenue now because we are the landlord, and there are a couple other entities that rent space in that building from us. So it was a wise investment overall.
Thank you, Representative Storer, for that question. Director Glenn.
Mr. Chairman, just to add on to that, Representative Storer, part of that was paid from the snowmobile account, part of it was paid from the OHV account. That was a legislative process that made that happen. Excuse me. Additionally, we were paying $175,000 a year in rent on that. The math we did with the rent coming in, it would take about 13 and a half years to pay for that building. So it was a smart move.
Thank you, Director Glenn. Any other questions? Mr. Kamingas, welcome. Thanks for sticking around. I know you're eager to get back north where that snow is, but please, as the person that's running this operation so well, give us some insight.
Thank you, Chairman Byron, members of the committee. Forrest Kaminga, I'm the Wyoming State Trails Program Manager. Been in this, in the program manager position for about 5 years now. This would be my 5th winter overseeing the entire program. I started 16 years ago as boots on the ground. So essentially I was the, trail crew, the one out there going and stuffing the 44,000 stakes in the ground and running a snowmobile for about 500 miles a week, about 100 miles a day. And you get to the weekends and the last thing I wanted to do was even look at a snowmobile. So in my capacity now, I can actually get on a snowmobile on the weekends and remember why I'm here, why I have the passion for the position, man. Absolutely love it. Got a fantastic team, fantastic crew under me. We sharpen our pencils when it comes to, putting a budget together every year. And we make sure we're putting that money where we need it, where the use is. And, we rely very heavily on public input, the local communities, the snowmobile clubs, the state association. We don't step outside. We don't do anything without running it past them first. And essentially that's where we're at today, is that communities who came to us. It's like, when are we going to need to, push this fee increase through? Because we know you're probably getting to that, that black and red line of, needing more funds to essentially continue operations, at the level we are today. So that's, kind of where I'll leave it. I know, just to put things into a little bit more perspective for you, I ran some numbers. 1994, a brand new snowmobile off the shelf was $6,000. That equivalent snow machine today is $25,000. So that's almost 300% increase in what, the users are paying for those machines. Another good statistic that I based off of 2014, our last fee increase, our average rate per grooming mile to our private contractors was $17 a mile. We're at 32 now. So it's double. I mean, it's just one of those that if we want to continue, providing the services we do, status quo, we're just going to need more money to do it.
Really appreciate that, Mr. Kaminga, not Kamingas. Committee, any other questions? State Parks, don't go far. We're going to have a few more. Anyone in the room that wants to testify on House Bill 4? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and go right to Zoom. Hey, Zoom world, as you can hear this, we're going to let two in at a time. Please, when it's your turn, introduce yourself, tell us who you're representing. Try to remember to take yourself off Zoom. And if you don't mind, we have a lot of work to do today, so keep it brief. There's general support of this bill, and eager to hear from you. And when I see you pop up, I'll go ahead and call on you. Mr. Miller, welcome to House TRW.
All right, can you hear me?
We got you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Mr. Chair and committee, my name is Burt Miller. I'm the American Council of Snowmobile Association president. My other volunteer jobs is working with the Snowbelt states and Canada. I'm also a director of the Wyoming State Snowmobile Association and a director of our local club. As we were just discussing there, it's hard to believe that it's been 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was the president of the state and came before you. So a lot has changed, and the budgets have been very, very stretched. State Trails customer satisfaction has been very high, and we noticed approximately 60% of those folks coming into our state really enjoy our state. With budgets being stretched, I'll give you an example. I received a phone call this week by Shoshone Forest, and they're going to be looking at shutting down some bathrooms. One of the bathrooms that they're going to be shutting down is right next to our safety shelter on the Beartooth Mountain Range. The nice thing about it is I picked up the phone and I called Forrest Kaminga, and he automatically was jumping on that to see how we can keep that bathroom open. I'm so thankful for that. These are the good partnerships that we need. When we look at grooming, we also look at a safety issue. If we have to cut back grooming in an area from say 4 days to 3 days or dreaded 2 days, those trails get awfully rough and they can get awful wild to ride. So the safety factor is there. Folks come out to Wyoming, of course, because we've got the beautiful scenery, the mountain riding, but really and truly, when you have state trails operating this program the way they do, the survey at 2021 ranked us very high right out of the goal. As I travel with other states and work with them, like Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Wisconsin, they're all working on just a few for their sticker fee increase. And I think it was brought to your attention how much a snowmobile has increased, pushing to $25,000. I live in Cody and I work in the automobile industry, and a new truck just to pull that beautiful new trailer with those sleds in it, it's about $80,000. So in the end, my point is trying to get to is we can afford this user fee increase, and we definitely want to keep our trails, folks coming out to see us as much as we can. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Committee, any questions, Mr. Miller? Hearing none. And for the other folks on Zoom, we have a list here we're given, and everyone is supportive of this bill. We've heard from a lot of you during the interim, so I appreciate all that backstory. But just in the respect of time and the folks in the room that have traveled for a couple of other bills, let's try to keep it to about a minute. Ms. Miller, please welcome, introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
Chairman Byron, members of the committee. My name is Brenda Miller. I'm the president of the Wyoming State Snowmobile Association. Just a little background, the state association was created in the early 1970s by the 4 or 5 clubs in the state at that time. The clubs at that time knew there was an importance to have a state organization to represent snowmobile clubs in the state at a higher level than just for local issues. It was important for the individual snowmobile clubs to have an organized voice at the state and national level. We know the money we pay for the user fee stickers goes to trail grooming maintenance, maintenance of safety shelters, maintenance of the parking lots and trailheads, parking lot expansion, along with the other infrastructure for our sport. It funds avalanche education programs and law enforcement rangers. The WSSA has worked with the legislature from the beginning to create a 100% user-funded program to support these initiatives. Snowmobilers get back what we put into the snowmobile program, and no additional funds are taken from the general fund to support snowmobiles. The cost of doing business is more expensive these days, and we do not want to face the possibility of decreased services for the snowmobile community. We support this bill to increase the resident, non-resident, commercial snowmobile user fees, and we also support the addition of antique snowmobile user fee that has been proposed by Wyoming State Trails. The increase would allow the program to stay status quo and give us the opportunity to create additional parking areas where people currently park along the highway because the current parking lots are full. I was recently asked if the snowmobile user fee would keep snowmobilers from coming to Wyoming, but without this increase, just the opposite would happen. Services would decrease, which in turn will change the user experience, and that's what will stop snowmobilers from coming to Wyoming. This in turn will affect the lodging tax, gas tax, and sales tax, all of which will take a hit when there are fewer snowmobilers. Smoother trails will likely even bring more riders to Wyoming. There are some people who say that they don't ride the trails, that they're likely parked in a user fee funded parking area at the trailhead that is maintained by Wyoming State Trails. And what happens is someone in their group gets hurt. The best and safest way to get that person off the mountain for medical attention and to the trailhead is by using the trail. I have also been told that Wyoming State Snowmobile Association doesn't represent all snowmobilers in Wyoming. I suspect that these folks may not be members of a club or the state association. What I will say about this comment is that we do represent them. When we are working with the Forest Service on travel management plans, the BLM on their resource management plan, or the Wyoming legislature regarding user fees, we are working to keep snowmobile access open whether it is on our public lands or for our trails and parking areas. We would appreciate your support for House Bill 4 as it's presented. This is a proactive measure to sustain and improve Wyoming snowmobile program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller, for that testimony. Committee, any questions? Just for the next couple folks that are going to come in and testify in House Bill 4, that was about 2.5 minutes. So try to tighten it up to about a minute. We really appreciate that you've spent your time waiting to testify on this bill. Let's go ahead and let in our next two. I'm going to hop down to the bottom of the list. Commissioner Jones, if you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself and turn your video on if you so choose, that would be appreciated. Welcome to House TRW.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Taylor Jones, Sweetwater County Commissioner. Just go over a couple of bullet points real quick. Something on the increase in the fee that we are asking to pay on average for a Wyoming resident. It would be about $2.38 for each day that we're out there. For non-residents, $6.59 a day. And for the commercial machines, $2.94. So it's a few bucks a day for the days that we're out there. Very minimal for what we get. Just to touch a little bit more on the trail markers that were mentioned, and I think Mr. Kaminga mentioned 44,000 or whatever the number was. Those trail markers are like delineator poles, so they're reflective on the top. Along with those trail markers, the state puts out safety shelters in various places around the state. Those two things work very well. They do, and they will save lives. As we all know, being in Wyoming, we can get caught in a blizzard just in our car. So it's easy to have the same thing happen in a snow machine. I've had it happen myself, and without those trail markers and safety shelters, I shudder to think what our situation would have been. So it's a lot more than just grooming trails. Also, these prices that we're asking for are comparable to states around us. Idaho, for example, is $60. I buy a sticker there every year. I ride Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and Utah, and our trails, hands down, are the best. So I'll stop there and stand for any questions.
Commissioner Jones, thank you so much for that testimony. Committee, any questions, Commissioner Jones? Appreciate it. I can't see the name, so go ahead and introduce yourself, and welcome to House TRW. Is this Mr. Slagowski?
That is correct. Thank you, Chairman Byron. My name is Jay Slagowski. I live in DuBois, Wyoming. I'm the current vice president of the Wyoming State Snowmobile Association. Thank you for all the work you've done on this. It sounds like you're well informed, you have the information you need, and we can move forward with this critical funding. I just have 3 bullets, and then I'll turn it over to any questions. You know, snowmobiling in Wyoming, it's always been a destination, top 10 in the world. That wasn't by accident, so keep that in mind. That's due to all those services that are aforementioned in the discussions. The program also supports a plethora of other multiple uses, backcountry skiing, snowboarding, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, fat tire bikes, adventure races, dog sledding. The list goes on and on. So even though we're paying to play, there are a lot of secondary benefits to this trail system in the winter. You've heard about it connecting communities. That is so critical for small towns such as DuBois, Dayton, Alpine. You can go across the state. The last thing I want to leave you with is if we compromise the services today, then the activities will likely not be considered anymore in future land management plans. They start all their NEPA and discussions with purpose and need statements. And so if these activities are no longer on the ground, no longer part of what we do in Wyoming, then we truly risk losing them as a whole. Thank you for everyone's time. and I'd answer any questions.
Appreciate that. Appreciate you logging in today. Hope you get a little bit of that storm coming your way. Committee, any questions? Okay, we're gonna go to Mr. Fritz, a wonderful constituent from House District 22. Mr. Fritz, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself. I can't see if you're off mute, but go ahead and talk and we'll figure it out.
There.
Yeah, we got you. Now we lost you. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Mr. Fritz. There you
Let's
go.
try that again. How's that?
We got you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm being told we have a lot of support from the committee, so I'll use my time just to say thank you for that support, and we hope to see you out on the trails.
Thank you, Mr. Fritz. Thanks for all you do in the community of Alpine for snowmobiling and in Western Wyoming. Committee, any questions of Mr. Fritz before we let him go? Enjoy that snow this weekend. All right, committee, anyone else in the room for
You as
public
well.
testimony? Seeing none, none online, we're good, we're clear. I'm gonna go ahead and close public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure? The bill has been moved by Representative Harshman, seconded by everyone. We'll go ahead and call it Representative Campbell. Committee, any questions? We can go ahead and work the bill. Representative Storr and I are happy to answer questions. If we don't have any, I'll entertain the question. Representative Harshman has called the question.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote. Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 4. Representative Campbell.
Aye.
Representative Connolly.
Aye.
Representative Harshman.
Aye.
Representative Jarvis.
Aye.
Representative Provenza.
Aye.
Representative Storr.
Aye.
Representative Thayer.
Aye.
Representative Worf.
Aye.
Chairman Byron.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 9 ayes.
Appreciate that. We'll talk about floor managing that later today. We are gonna move on to House Bill 85. So folks, we are due to be back upstairs in about 70 minutes, and I think my co-chair and I are happy to run late. We keep getting pinched for time, but we do have 2 very important bills. House Bill 85 is next up, local approval for simulcasting, and I think the unique thing about this came out of the JAC, and a lot of those members are no longer with us. So I have put the director of the State Gaming Commission on the spot here, and he has kindly offered to go through this bill briefly and what it does. This committee has spent a lot of time in the last week talking about it, and I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for stepping up on short notice to go over the gist of 85.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Nick Laramendi. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. Can you hear me now? How about now? Can you hear me now? How about this one? This one work okay? My name is Nick Laramendi. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. How about now? Is that better? There we go. Chairman Byron has asked me to kind of briefly go over this bill. In order to do that, I'll give you a little bit of history as the current regulatory structure is now. Currently, for a simulcasting permit, the operator has to get county approval and county approval only. So if an operator wants to open an OTB location within municipal limits, instead of going to the city or the town or the municipality, they actually just go to the county. The purpose of this bill is to create what they are calling a local authorizing board. So if the OTB is in the county has ultimate approval of it. If it's within the municipality, the town or the city would have the ultimate control over the approval of it. This bill creates Section 210, which defines simulcasting, explains that simulcasting can only be conducted by a holder of a simulcasting permit issued by the Gaming Commission and approved by the local approving authority. This directs the Gaming Commission, to promulgate rules for simulcasting. Moving to page 3. This is where it goes to, if the simulcasting is conducted within corporate limits of any city or town, the permit renewal shall be subject to the approval of the governing body of the city or town. Likewise, on line 8, if it's in the county, it goes to the county. This has some language that talks about if the simulcasting is conducted within a half mile of the corporate limits of a city that has exercised the authority granted under Wyoming Statute 15.3.202, the permit or renewal shall be subject to consent of the governing body of that city. Easily put, if it's within a half mile of the city limits and the county approves it, the city within that half mile needs to grant their approval. Moving on to page 4. This directs that anybody seeking application or an application for simulcast must file an application with the local approving authority within 90 days prior to the expiration of it. They're also required to reimburse the actual cost of publication of a notice for the public. If the permit or the renewal is subject to the consent by a local authority under paragraph D, I, or II, the applicant shall notify the local authority of its application. New to this also, it says after the receipt of an approval or renewal application under paragraph E and I of this section, the local approving authority shall promptly prepare and publish notice of an application in a newspaper of local circulation for a week, for 2 consecutive weeks, and post the notice on its official website. That's new to the law. Currently, there's no requirements for municipalities or counties to post any public notice for these kind of permits. Continuing on to page 6, this also allows the local approving authority to impose certain conditions. Under the current law, the statute states that a county may issue or deny, or they may grant or not grant their approval to conduct simulcasting within the county. It doesn't really specify any sort of stipulations that they can put on that. This bill, it was drafted to grant municipalities and counties the ability to impose reasonable conditions on those approvals. It talks about the operating hours. The local approval board can mandate the hours of operation for these, designations within the permitted premises related to the areas the historic horse racing machines are located. It says also that they shall require the applicant to identify the specific location in the city, town, or county where the simulcasting will be conducted and the number of horse racing machines to be permitted. That also is new. Currently, there's no stipulation. An operator will go to a county for a county resolution for approval. It doesn't really specify how many terminals they will put in a location. It could be anywhere from 5 terminals to 5,000. So this gives the local approving board, some control over how many terminals are within the locations. It also talks about revocations of these approvals. This gives the local approving authority the right to revoke approval or deny a renewal of the approval only for a good cause, which is limited to a breach of the holder by the permit for any reasonable conditions imposed by the local approving authority or the gaming commission that are not cured by the holder of the permit within 10 days. It also talks about notification by the commission that the holder of a permit or the employee or agent thereof has acted in violation of Wyoming gaming laws. This would direct the commission to notify the local licensing authorities if we find any of their employees or the operator to be in violation of Wyoming gambling laws or the sports wagering laws. This also talks about the welfare of the people residing in the immediate vicinity of the permitted premises. If they're adversely or seriously affected, that is grounds for a revocation of a permit. Moving to page number 9. This talks about the consent of the second local authority and kind of goes through how that looks. It says the commission and the local approving authority have any objections or concerns, they must be done in writing no later than 30 days of receipt of notification of the application. The commission and the local approving authority shall not approve a permit unless all objections or concerns are raised by the local authority, have been considered and settled as determined by the local approving authority. Moving to, let's see, page 10. This changes a little bit of the definitions currently under 1125-102. It takes out some added verbiage for a parimutuel event and just simply makes it, under current law, it talks about events that have previously occurred utilizing an electronic system or device that affords an opportunity for exercise of skill or judgment. It simply removes that language and just calls them what they are, which is a historic horse racing machine. Just kind of clears that up a little bit. It also adds some definitions to what a historic horse racing machine is, which essentially takes the definition that it strikes from the previous definition and just cleans that language up. It also defines what a local approving authority is, and also what the local authority is. On page 12 of this bill, this strikes some language that talks about the commission shall require at least one steward to supervise each simulcast location that is approved by the commission. This is what's known as a simulcast steward. In practice, it's not used by our office very often. This is a person that would just oversee any sort of administrative hearings for a rule violation at an off-track wagering location. Let's see, going down to, let's see, further down on page 13, this says that the commission may issue parimutuel permits for a specified period not to exceed 3 years, which is the current, that's the current language. It says that has been approved by the Board of County Commissioners except as provided for simulcasting permits. The way that I understand this to read now, if it is a live event permit that an operator is looking for, they would still seek county approval only. For simulcasting, which would be HHR in an OTB location, it would go through either the municipal body or the county, depending on where the location is at. This changes some of the language from parimutuel events to horse racing machines on page 14 and 15. Let's see, on page 15, section 3, line 16 and 17. This talks about Wyoming statute 1125-102A, VII A through D is repealed. Under current law, A, B, C, and D. The most important one, and I think the one that you're going to have the most discussion about today, is going to be C. Talks about no simulcasting may be conducted within 100 miles of any premises permitted under this act, except that the commission may waive the 100-mile limitation if the simulcast permit application includes written approval from the permittee whose permitted premises is within 100 miles. Ultimately, what that means is we have something that's called the 100-mile rule. If there is a racetrack within 100 miles of an off-track wagering location, while races are running at that time, that OTB has to shut down unless the operator of that OTB and the track owner come to an agreement to allow them to continue to operate. I think with that, Mr. Chair, I would stand for any questions. Hopefully that suffices what you needed me to do.
Thank you, Director, for stepping up on the spot. Got some notes from the committee. We're still writing. Let's go ahead and open up for any questions to the Director. Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So 2 questions, please. On page 8, so that line 13. So talking about if the welfare of the people, determined to be adversely and seriously affected. My question is, those are very vague terms, right? So will the adverse and serious be defined by the local municipality? They get to determine based on their feedback from residents and citizens what adverse and serious might look like. First question.
Chairman Byron, Representative Campbell, that's a great question. This bill does not define what adverse or seriously affected is. That might be something to consider. That's about the best that I can do for you on
No,
that.
I appreciate letting our municipalities decide what that looks like. Because it is, it's gonna, I mean, adverse and serious is gonna look different for different communities, you know, and based on what that looks like. So I appreciate giving them that authority. Second piece of, I mean, just clarifying, based on what you said towards the end, it was my understanding that 100-mile rule had been repealed, so is no longer on the statutes. If you would clarify that for me.
Chairman Byron, Representative Campbell, it is not repealed. This bill would repeal that language. As it stands today, that is in effect.
Thank you, Director. Representative Campbell, page 15, lines 16 and 17, and I have the Green Book here if you want to take a look at it. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Representative Campbell. Committee. Representative Wharf.
Director, I guess I have just a question. On page 15, the section that you're deleting, can you maybe explain that a little bit more? Because I guess I'm hearing that it may have given some people an advantage at one point, now it's not. So I'd like to know, I mean, because I want to make sure we're all on an equal and a fair playing field, and I want to make sure that we're not doing something that shifts that balance. And then I do have a question also about the local regulating board, whatever you want to call that. If you feel it's going to be in conflict with your commission, those are concerns that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wharf. Director.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Wharf. I'll take the second question first because that's the easiest one. It's not going to make any effect on our agency. Currently, when we process applications and we go through the approval process, we're looking for like a county approval. In this case, if it's within the city, we would just look for a city approval. So it's not going to change anything on the regulatory side for us. As far as the existence of the 100-mile rule, I can tell you that the 100-mile rule in Wyoming statute was enacted before HHR was a thing. It is my understanding in my time here that the original intent of the 100-mile rule was put in place to draw people from an OTB. At the time, an OTB was people sitting on couches watching televisions at live horse races, betting on live horse races. That was it, not HHR machines. And getting them to stop betting on a live horse race from a TV and taking them to a racetrack to bet on live horse races as they were being conducted. So my tenure with the commission, I started with the commission in 2009. During the course of that time, we've had two now, but originally in 2020, we had one new operator came on, and the 100-mile rule was in place then, and there was no agreements. They didn't come to any agreements, so two existing track operators had to close down when they were running races. They never entered into an agreement, so there was no, I don't know what the best way to put it is. They never came to an agreement to operate. And when you look at the numbers throughout those times, the live handle numbers for that racetrack never were affected. Like it didn't increase the live event numbers after they had agreements in place. The numbers remained basically the same. So like I said, I can tell you that one operator did exercise the 100-mile rule. I think ultimately, and they can speak to it better than I can from the business perspective, I don't know if it did anything for them.
Thank you, Director. Thank you.
Yeah,
Representative
thank
Wolf.
you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And, you know, for the committee, we have put the Director of the Gaming Commission in the hot seat here. He, you know, certainly did not draft, nor is he for or against his bill. So, you know, as we come up with some questions here, we're gonna have a lot of other testimony. It is currently 1:30. It is my rather aggressive goal to have this kind of wrapped up by 2. We have a lot of folks that drove a long ways to testify, not only on this bill, but also on our second bill. So with that, committee, any other questions, Director? If there are none, don't go far. Any other electeds in the room, current electeds in the room that want to speak to it? Not seeing any. Jeremiah, come on up. Welcome to House TRW for Zoomland and the committee. Go ahead and reintroduce yourselves.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. We represent all 93 county commissioners from all 23 counties in this state. And for those of you that I haven't gotten to meet, I look forward to doing that and being a resource for you in the years to come. Mr. Chairman, I'll try and be brief. There's a lot to cover relative to this particular issue. The bill that's before you starts from a draft that I worked with one of the operators on for 18 months before I brought that to the Joint Appropriations Committee this last year. And just to start, if you look at existing statute, and the director mentioned this, there's only one line relative to local governance of this issue. And that's in 1125-102A, Romanet 7B. And that says that simulcasting may be conducted off the permitted premises only if the Board of County Commissioners of the county in which the simulcasting will be conducted grants its approval. That's all existing state statute provides. So it's left a lot of question about what is our power. Can we impose restrictions on that? A lot of counties have gone down that path and decided that they would enter into agreements with the operators and try to enforce things that way and have a revocation provision as necessary. But even those counties will say that they're sitting there with a little bit of question mark about whether those resolutions would stand up if challenged. So we began to work on this particular legislation. The commissioner concern was reinforced by a Supreme Court case, Campbell County Board of Commissioners versus Wyoming Horse Racing, and that particular case said, and I'll just quote really quickly, that the Gaming Commission, not counties, have the sole authority over the issuance, administration, and revocation of parimutuel and simulcasting permits once county commissioners give their initial approval. So we can't revoke, is what the Supreme Court said in that case. So we've come to you with the request to pursue some legislation that would provide us with some greater balance within appropriate controls. You will find in this legislation words like good faith, good cause, and reasonable conditions. And we're perfectly fine to work within those sorts of constraints. Mr. Chairman, I did provide you with an amendment. When we got this bill out of the Appropriations Committee, there were many unanswered questions amongst us as well as the operators around some of the provisions. The committee agreed to move that forward, understanding that we would try and come to some agreement on amendments. With three of their operators' support, we have put together the Commissioners Association as well as the Association of Municipalities, and that's what's before you today. Mr. Chairman, respecting your time, I'm happy to go through that, but I will also do whatever you would like.
Appreciate that. Let's go ahead and pivot over here, and we probably will come back to that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Executive Director, my name is Ashley Harpshoot. I'm the Executive Director of Wyoming Association of Municipalities. I want to give a very brief background about us because I think it's the heart of what we're trying to do here from our perspective. As a 501c6 private nonprofit association, WAM has been the foundation of support for all Wyoming's 99 municipalities since its organization in 1928. We provide vital educational training resources that enhance the capabilities of all of our local elite officials and other municipal leaders, we promote policies that prioritize local decision-making, ensuring that the voices of the 68% of the citizens who reside within these communities are heard and respected. WHAM believes the best government governs closest to the people, rooted in simplicity, accountability, and self-governance. Wyoming's Constitution affirms this in Article 13, Section 1, otherwise known as Home Rule, and empowers local leaders to make those decisions for their communities. Guided by those principles in our WHAM legislative agenda, we are committing to preserving the constitutional authority of local governments to serve effectively and independently. Mr. Chairman, I would like to commence by expressing my sincere appreciation for the extensive efforts that have been invested in the development of this bill. It is encouraging to note the collaborative spirit that has emerged among the Gaming Commission, county commissioners, and permittees, which has fostered a productive consensus. As we move forward, we aspire to cultivate a partnership that is conducive to business growth, recognizing that gaming industry is playing an increasingly significant role in our local communities. The partnership of work that has gone into this bill and proposed amendments not only supports economic development, but also enhances community engagement and prosperity, reflecting our commitment to being proactive and supportive to the stakeholders of this evolving sector. WHAM's members are committed to being business-friendly partners, as 42 of the 45 permittees are within municipal borders. I cannot stress how important it is for local authority of the governing body to be at the table as this industry moves onto our main streets. Not only will the local governing body have a seat at the table, but this bill, most importantly, adds a new notification process that allows for local input. Per the one-pager I sent you last night, this bill provides clarity for the local approval process, in that it provides public notice and the opportunity for protests, as well as the conditions under which permits can be revoked. This is critical, as it provides an opportunity for the citizens to define what their local landscape will look like. Right now, there is no process to allow for this. Not only does this provide clarity, local authorization, but it modernizes the current statute with the repeal of the 100-mile rule, allowing our current industry partners all to be on a level playing field and maximize local revenues through a new source. As you know, we're in a bit of a strain on our revenues right now. We are lucky to have we have all Wyoming-based companies permitted right now, but the future is very unknown. I've had several cities send over call logs from their police departments and provide feedback to understand the stress on municipal services. It is important to acknowledge, although the current situation is being effectively managed, there exists the potential for growth that could significantly alter the demands placed on municipal services. Should this growth occur, it may lead to an increased strain on various essential services. This includes your law enforcement, emergency medical services, and street maintenance. Therefore, proactive measures and strategic planning are crucial to ensure that the municipality is prepared to adapt and respond to any changes in service requirements in order to maintain the quality and efficiency of these vital public services. We implore you to allow House Bill 85 to move forward so the 68% of the population has an opportunity to speak on the development of their community and the other 22% in the county level. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Director Harpstreet. Any other questions, committee? Representative Worf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. I guess one of the questions I have is directed at you, Jeremiah. From what you testified, it sounded like to me that once the local authorization is kind of signed off, you're basically giving all authority to the Gaming Commission, and you would no longer have any authority. And do I understand that right? Is that what you said?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Worf, I think that's where the gray area stands. As I mentioned, many a county has entered into some sort of resolution agreement with the operators, and some of those do have requirements to come back to the county commissioners. In fact, I have one here if anybody needs a copy of one of those resolutions. The question is, if that resolution was challenged, given the Supreme Court decision, whether it would actually be enforceable to have them come back based on that initial approval.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, the handout that we got, amendment number 1, does that in your opinion, put that back to where the commission retains authority and that all that authority is not transferred to the gaming commission?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Worth, Amendment 1 really gets to the relationship between the county and the municipality in terms of that authorization. As the bill came out of the Appropriations Committee, it had the word consent. In other words, there was fear that there would be this dueling or two-step permitting process. You'd have to go to the municipality and the county if it was inside of the municipality. And so we were trying to find that balance by which one governing body would have the final say and the other one would have some participation in that process. And that's what that amendment represents.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, then, so when you're talking about, there's 6 different amendments. I didn't know if you were proposing this all as one amendment or if you have 6 individual amendments. And I guess that's what I'm asking for, a little bit of direction, Mr. Chairman.
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Worth, this is one grand amendment. They're different parts of the bill that they each deal with, is why they're presented that way.
Representative Worf?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure I understood this. The way I saw it as 6 different amendments, so I appreciate you clarifying that because I wasn't sure what we were doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Worf. Director, Representative Thayer, follow-up or question?
No question.
Committee, Representative Campbell.
Question. So primarily, thank you both for being here and very grateful to see the counties and cities working together on this and truly appreciate the efforts. So my questions primarily, Ashley, are for you. I assume you have seen the amendment as presented. So if, and to Representative Worf, that was my thought too, it's kind of like a division. Here's the package, but we can vote yes or no on any of these. So it does change things if this is presented as one, and I'll tell you why. My greatest concern is going to be on Amendment 5, so page 8. Lines 11 through 13 completely removes the city's ability to determine the impact on the welfare and if there is an adverse impact. Page 8, lines 11 through 13. Deleting that concerns me. So if you could speak to that.
Thank you, Representative Campbell. Director?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, I'm going to let my counterpart, Jeremiah, or Director Ryman, speak to that as well, but there's some language above it that we feel is all-encompassing, that we were trying to meet in the middle with our stakeholders, but you want to speak to that, Jeremiah?
Director Ryman?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, first off, if you're wondering where that language comes from, it actually is a steal from our existing liquor license statute. So that's, there's some familiarity there. In terms of the amendment to delete that particular provision, first off, that provision of this bill comes under the renewal process where we come back to a particular application. I actually found an amendment we didn't include on the list, and I apologize for that. I was confirming with the other operators that we're okay to mention this, and that is if you go forward in the bill from where you're at to page 6, line 7, there's this provision about the initial review that we have with the applicants to start the process, to actually approve them initially. Right now, the language says including but not limited to. We actually had an agreement to strike the words but not limited to the following, so it would just stop at including. And we thought in doing that, that provision that you're mentioning would come under that because it would be all encompassing of the things that we reasonably could impose upon the applicant, and that we wouldn't want to then come around 3 years later, 6 years later, and say, we're going to shut you down because of a new community concern, unless that was addressed up front.
Appreciate it. Representative Campbell, follow up? Maybe not.
Maybe. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to make sure I'm understanding this. So it would be identifying potential concerns on the front end, right? Issuing the permit. They have the permit for 3 years. And then during that renewal process, if there were additional concerns that arose within the community, then the permit simply would not be reissued after 3 years.
Director Ryman?
Just to clarify, and then I'll ask the question.
Yeah,
Please.
Mr. Chairman, yes. On the front end, we would identify those concerns, try and work through that at a renewal. We would work in good faith to try and address any issues and try and come to resolution of those to continue the authorization of that permit.
So then a follow-up question, just to be sure. So in that 3-year period, let's say we're 8 months in and some serious adverse and, concerns are being expressed. Our city then needs to wait until that 3-year period to address them? Would be my question.
Director?
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, no. And in fact, the bill has provisions in it. If you go ahead to page 6, lines 20 through 22, it has a provision in there that we may modify the reasonable conditions if we have good cause.
Thank you, Director and Representative Campbell. Committee, any more questions? If you are going to testify for this bill, please come up and fill the seats. I'm not trying to cut you guys off, but I would like to keep the conversation going. Yep, Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, just, I guess, out of curiosity, on page 8, line 6, the intent or motivation for removing the or any employee or agent thereof. What was the intent behind that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the reality is that the body best to tell if there's a gaming commission violation is the gaming commission. We didn't feel that was our place, but they could certainly warn us if those violations had taken place, and that would be then a reason we could revoke a permit.
Appreciate that. Committee, any more questions? Go far.
Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Yeah, please.
Just quickly make sure that you're well aware. The one amendment that I mentioned is on page 6. Was it line 8, I believe?
Line 7 after including.
Or on 7, yes. So if we could make that deletion, that was my mistake. I apologize.
I got that noted.
That's a critical one for us.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you both. Anyone else in the room to testify in favor of House Bill 85? Just to remind everyone, we are at 150. If you're here to testify in favor, please come up, fill a chair. Introduce yourself. Welcome
Mr.
to
Chairman,
House
Lori
Bill
Erbkite with Wyoming Horse Racing LLC. We are one of the original 2 permittees in the state. Now there's 3 now we have 4 permittees. Real briefly, we are in support of this bill. We worked with the county commissioners and the municipalities. All 3 of the operators did, and we are 100% in support of the amendment and the bill itself. We think it's in pretty good shape. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Erbkite.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Byron, members of the committee. My name is Neil Tomlinson. I'm here representing Wyoming Downs. We also worked all through the interim with the Appropriations Committee on this bill, and then also with the municipalities and the County Commission Association afterwards. And we're also in full support and support the amendment as they presented. Thank you.
Thank you, committee. Any questions for Mr. Tomlinson? Thank you for being here. Welcome, introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee and chairman. My name is Amber Leba. I am the COO of the Greater Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce. And just briefly, we're in full support of this bill as well. And with that, I mean, I'll just echo everything that's been said already. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Leba, for joining us today. Committee, any questions? Really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone in the room before I hop to Zoom? Okay, before we hop to Zoom, I think it would be appropriate this time, just reminding everyone, it's 1:52, we're making okay progress. If you are here to testify in opposition to this bill, please come up, or to bring suggestions, sit down at our chairs. As some committee members may or may not know, we have wonderful former senator in our presence, so we'll start on your side, Ms. Ellis, and we'll work our way that way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Affie Ellis. I work for a law firm called Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck. I'm here today on behalf of my client, Cowboy Racing, and I wanted to give you a little bit about my background. Although I did serve in the Wyoming legislature, in addition to doing that, early on in my career, I spent a brief amount of time working for the National Indian Gaming Commission, which is a federal regulatory agency that oversees all of Indian gaming in the United States. And then most recently, I spent 7 years on the Navajo Nation Gaming Enterprise Board of Directors. My role in that board was to provide legal counsel and advice and oversee some of our operations. And so I'm very familiar with, obviously, Navajo gaming law, Arizona, New Mexico, and just have attended a variety of industry events. But with that, I'll leave it to my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Clement. I'm a principal with Cowboy Racing in Thunder Plains.
Thank you, Mr. Clement.
Shane Schultz, also with Brownstein, here on behalf of Cowboy Racing.
Appreciate that.
With that, I'll start. I took this quote from the 2020 Wyoming Gaming Commission study, and I quote, "The stated goal of legalizing HHR was to benefit and provide a revenue stream for the horse racing industry, fostering more racing days in Wyoming, provide an incentive to Wyoming-bred horses and horsemen, and provide additional revenue for economic development for cities and counties." HHR is primarily to support horse racing, and so we built a track. Thunder Plains is the first track built in Wyoming in decades. It's the first new full-size horse racing track built in the United States in at least 10 years. It will be the state's first full-size track. To put this in perspective, existing tracks at fairgrounds are 5/8 of a mile. So the track in Evanston is 7/8. Thunder Plains is a full mile. It's located 10 miles east of Cheyenne, just off I-80. This has been all private investment. This is me and my partners' money. We have spent $6 million to date. It is going to cost millions more to get ready for race day on September 24th. And we have been approved to run the necessary 16 days of live horse racing, and we're very excited about that. The long-term vision of this property isn't just a racetrack. It's an equestrian center that will be open year-round. The economic impact horse racing has is substantial. Each horse supports 12 jobs, from those who own the horse, transport the horse, groom and prepare the horse for race day. This is a significant development which supports the agriculture industry and fulfills the mission of the original intent of the statute for allowing historic horse racing, or HHR machines, to operate. Our long-term goal is to create a regional destination. We're 25 miles away from Colorado. We're 25 miles away from Nebraska off I-80 and I-25. For Cowboy Racing, this is the first and foremost about enhancing live horse racing. We are committed to the safety of the horses and have learned that the surface of the track and the length of the track matter. We sought to follow the HISA standards for safety. For those of you who aren't familiar, HISA stands for Horse Integrity and Safety Act, which provides national uniform safety and competition standards for thoroughbred horse racing. We then partnered with First Racing. They only participate in tracks that are HISA compliant for safety. We want to elevate the standard of horse racing in Wyoming. We hope that by making such a large investment with our track, perhaps the other tracks will similarly invest in theirs. Competition in the marketplace is a good thing. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Chairman, and to be mindful of time, unless there are questions for Mr. Clement, I'll continue.
Thank you, Mr. Clement. Thank you for your investment in Wyoming, and certainly in this region. Go ahead, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We also provided you with a handout, and it contains a number of proposed amendments, but attached to it with a paper clip, you'll see a title, or a document titled Cowboy Racing Approvals. I wanted to give you a sense of what Cowboy Racing has undertaken thus far in their process. So to enter the market, Cowboy Racing has been working back and forth between receiving approvals between the Wyoming Gaming Commission and the Laramie County Commission. So please take a look at that handout and you'll see the approval process that we've undertaken so far. First and foremost, you'll note that Laramie County has voted to allow parimutuel events, which is required by statute. Cowboy Racing first approached the County Commission in October of 2023. Cowboy Racing then received Gaming Commission approval for a live parimutuel event. Cowboy Racing at this time was required to build a track to the tune of millions of dollars before it could obtain its live permit. It obtained this permit in November of 2024. Cowboy Racing then sought its general simulcast permit from the Wyoming Gaming Commission. Cowboy Racing received this approval also in November of 2024 and had to have this permit in place before it could then ask for approval before the Laramie County Commission for site-specific approval. So once Cowboy Racing had its general simulcast permit, they again appeared before the Laramie County Commission and received approval for 3 site-specific locations for off-track betting, or OTBs, in Cheyenne, and that happened on January 7th. Cowboy Racing will go back to the Gaming Commission in March of 2025 to get final approval for these site locations. Once these approvals are received, Cowboy Racing will also need the City of Cheyenne to approve its OTB facilities, primarily through building permits and liquor license approvals. We wanted to illustrate this process to you to demonstrate the tremendous capital outlay that Cowboy Racing has provided to get this far in the process. While it would have been significantly less to lease a public track, Cowboy Racing is committed to this project and making a long-term capital investment that we believe will benefit future generations of Laramie County residents to come.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll keep adding to Mrs. Ellis's
Go ahead, Mr. Schultz.
testimony. So the Gaming Commission has all the info it needs to approve a simulcast permit. The commission has the authority to deny a request for a location for articulated reasons. For example, they can't approve a location if it doesn't comply with local zoning ordinance. The special zoning clearance is already required for certain things like adult entertainment, shooting ranges, etc. Not sure why the cities don't use existing special zoning authorities. County Commission can only approve an OTB application if it is in compliance with these types of zoning requirements. In other words, the County Commission has authority to deny an application who is out of compliance. Last year, the Gaming Commission and the JAC hired an independent contractor to produce a study on Wyoming's gaming industry. Report suggested a need to enact anti-money laundering statutes and adopt rules to support the HISA compliance for safety. We're pleased that Senator Nethercott has an anti-money laundering legislation. We spoke in support of that in the Senate. And Wyoming looks to better understand the horse racing, broader gaming industry in other states. We suggest they consider looking at Kentucky some more. Kentucky, understand the local government involvement and approval for gaming facilities comes in the form of zoning and land use, business and licensing permits, compliance with local ordinances. We're not sure what the problem of this bill solves without creating more problems. We're concerned about the tremendous risk for arbitrary and capricious decision-making. We've heard from those in the community who dislike the number of machines that are operating in certain counties like Laramie County, where the number of gaming facilities have grown. This bill doesn't limit the number of machines or number of facilities. Our concern will allow existing operators to add more and more machines to their approved facilities, but used to prevent new operators from entering the market.
That, Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions for Mr. Schultz, I also wanted to add we have an online participant, Scott DeRudy, who is with First Racing. He's partnered with Cowboy Racing, and he's an expert and can provide some additional information. But I want to talk a little bit about the 100-mile rule. And this was talked about briefly when the bill was presented, but you'll see on page 15, lines 16 and 17 would repeal a portion of the statute found in 1125, paragraph A, Romanet 7, subparagraphs A through D. So we've asked, we'll provide some explanation, but if you look at the amendment, that language in the proposed amendment or the memo that I provided to you, you'll see the language contained in paragraph A. That language has been mostly inserted back into the bill of House Bill 85. On page 3, same with paragraph B, that concept's also reinserted, as well as the ability for the commission to promulgate rules. It's found on page 2 of the bill. But you'll see that this critical language, no simulcasting may be conducted within 100 miles of any permitted premises, that language would be removed. I'd ask my colleague, Mr. Clement, to explain the history of this rule and I think some misconceptions about its application, not just in Wyoming, but in other states.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
The 100-mile rule exists pretty much everywhere there's a regime like this where some form of parimutuel gaming off-site supports a track. The 100 miles is geographic protection for the local track. The concept is simple. The 100-mile rule supports the purses at the local track. That's the whole idea. If an OTB operation is happening, the local track has the 100 miles. Again, the direct tie from HHR to the horse racing. So when that revenue generation happens, if you're within the 100 miles and that's your track, then you can ask the other tracks, would you like to participate in our purses? During race days and race times, anyone operating within 100 miles of the track has two options. They can either turn off their OTB machines or they can negotiate an agreement with the live horse racing operator to obtain a waiver which would allow them to continue to operate their OTB machines during race times. It's in the interest of the live track operator to negotiate an agreement where the OTB offers a percentage or flat fee to the live horse racing operator to support their purses. The scenario is a win-win for both parties. The OTB gets to keep their machines on, which generates tax revenue for local governments, and it supports the live horse racing event. This was the legislature's intent in authorizing HHR machines in 2013. The gaming study found that if purses continue to grow in Wyoming, this would only make Wyoming more competitive when attracting more horses. This is a vital factor if Wyoming wants to grow the amount of live horse racing, since the state is limited in the number of months which it can conduct live racing. Alternative to a percentage or flat fee, some operators can agree to provide reciprocal waivers. If I waive for you at my horse track, you'll waive for me at your horse track. This is how it currently works in Wyoming among existing operators and other states that authorize live horse racing and have similar rules to the 100-mile rule. Examples, California is a 20-mile rule, New York 40, Florida 100, Illinois 160, New Mexico and Maine and Kentucky 75. Of these states, Maine specifies in its statutes for harness racing that if an OTB is within 75 miles, it must pay 2% of the wagers made at the OTB facility at the time live racing is being conducted. And if the OTB is within 50 miles on the day of a live horse race, it must pay 1% of the wagers on that day. We're not advocating that Wyoming take this approach, but rather to illustrate that this is the industry standard and how 100-mile rule supports the legislature's intent for HHR machines to support live horse racing. We studied these laws, educated ourselves on the industry, and made a significant business decision to the tune of millions of dollars of private investment into the state of Wyoming in reliance on the 100-mile rule. The other operators all had the benefit of entering the market with that rule. We are simply asking to have the 100-mile rule reinstated in this bill as a matter of fairness, particularly since we are building a track with private funds and not merely leasing a track at a public facility. We provided a proposed amendment for your consideration to that effect. In closing on this point, we'd ask you to think through what would happen if the 100-mile rule did not exist. For a community like Laramie County, which currently has hundreds of machines and several gaming facilities, not $1 from any of those machines would go to supporting live horse racing in Laramie County. This is counter to the very rationale promised in 2013 when the legislature authorized HHR machines.
Thank you, and just it's 2:05 right now. We will be late going upstairs, committee, but there are, and I have no intent to, we've just been told there's another person online that would like to testify. We need to think about getting it wrapped up. Thank you.
I'll be brief on my last point, Mr. Chairman. There is language on page 9 where the bill was worked by JAC in the interim that was paragraph K, which allowed any applicant a right of appeal to a district court if a permit was denied by a local governing authority. In back of the JAC version from October 31st to November 1st, you'll see that language. When the bill reemerged in December, there are two new standards. Paragraph J on page 9 allows for a right of appeal for existing applicants seeking renewal, but on page 10, paragraph K, new applicants seeking approval have no right of appeal from the decision of a local approving authority. I don't want to talk this out anymore other than if you're a new applicant, and I know that there's been a comparison used, it's like liquor licenses, and this isn't a fair comparison. You're getting a statewide permit. This is a lot more like industrial siding in some regards, where you're going to get a state kind of approval and you still have local laws. And so for me, for us, the right of appeal, especially on a new application, is very important.
Appreciate that, Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for any of the three of you. How many days are you talked about 14 days of racing in September or something, I thought I
Yeah.
heard, but what is the plan as we move into this? Are you going to race 180 days a year or 10 days or what? Go ahead, man.
Representative Harshman, we're approved for 16 race days. September 24th and September 25th we'll start, and then we'll run every weekend in October through October 26th. So our plans right now are to run 16 race days. We have to get that under our belts, and then we can see what the future might hold.
Thank you, Mr. Clement.
How much,
Representative
Mr.
Harshman,
Chairman?
follow up.
So the county commission then approves how many race days?
The Gaming Commission.
Gaming commission then, yes. Okay, well, we'll hear from others too. So I'm just trying to learn where this rub is at, and I think I'm starting to kind of hear a little bit. This committee obviously we haven't heard these issues. So, okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, committee. Any more questions? Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a two-questioner today. May I ask two questions?
Proceed.
Thank you, sir. So my understanding from what you said is that without the 100-mile rule in effect, then the tracks and the OTB establishments would have to enter into negotiation and how are we going to do this and what does this look like and how giving them the option to participate in or not. Am I good so far?
I think you maybe, Mr. Chairman, Representative
Ms.
Campbell, maybe misstated that.
Okay.
With the 100-mile rule, it's a very elegant solution that requires the live horse track operator to negotiate with the OTB operator. It forces us, because it's mutually beneficial for the OTB operator to keep their machines on, generating tax revenue. It's beneficial for us for those machines to be on because it contributes to our purses. So we've heard some misconfusion or some confusion out there that the intent is to shut these facilities down. That doesn't help us. I hope that clarifies.
It does. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Please proceed.
So I guess my question, just in terms of good business, with or without the 100-mile rule, with or without, wouldn't it be in the best interest to negotiate those terms?
Ms. Ellis.
Ms. Chairman Byron, Representative Campbell, yes. But without the 100-mile rule, there's no incentive to negotiate at all. The local OTBs will continue to operate as they do. All of their revenue will continue to fund their racetracks in their communities and their companies, wherever they may be located. And so for Laramie County, and I live in Cheyenne, we have a number of these gaming facilities. Not $1 of that would go to supporting the live horse track, which is very opposite of the promise that was made in 2013 when these machines were authorized.
Thank you. Committee,
Mr. Chairman, we have one more amendment, if I may.
please proceed.
Sorry, I understand I can appreciate your time crunch, but I'll say, we heard from testimony and we've worked closely, obviously, with the County Commissioners Association and WHAM and have those individuals in the highest regard, but they were very clear that the amendments they drafted were within consultation with the other three operators. We have not been part of those discussions. So this is really our first chance of kind of laying out some of our concerns and our positions. Along those lines, you'll see in that memo, we prepared one final amendment for your consideration, and Representative Byron, you can appreciate this, it has to do with the effective date. If you look at page 16, paragraph B, it talks about on or after July 1st, all applicants for the simulcasting permit shall be subject to these new requirements. That would be fine if it was left at that point, but then you'll see this additional language, and it's really complicated, and I would just ask you to spend some time reading it. As my colleagues and I have been reading it, we interpret this to mean it's supposed to have somewhat of a retroactive effect on existing people like us who are going through this application process. And so we have concerns about how that would work, and then in the broader sense, why we're being singled out and treated unfairly. We're just asking to enter in the market as the other operators entered the market, and now that we're mid-process, to just let us finish out the process and then treat us as the other approved operators have been treated. So in conclusion, we understand that there are some people with strong feelings who want to give more local control to counties and municipalities over gaming and horse racing in Wyoming. However, we urge this committee to be mindful of some of the unintended consequences, some of which we've articulated here today. Cowboy Racing is the only entity currently mid-process with its permitting. Until today, I'll be very frank with you, we've been reluctant to raise our concerns about this bill, in large part because we have needed county commission approvals for our proposed gaming facilities. In fact, and we've mentioned this before, Cowboy Racing continues to navigate this process, and we still need approval from the City of Cheyenne for our building permits and liquor licenses. By expressing our legitimate concerns with the bill, we have put ourselves at risk and in a precarious situation, as is underscored by the city's existing licensing authority to prevent us from being successful with our investment. However, we felt it was important for this committee to hear the bill from all stakeholders, not just three, and to understand the impacts from this bill from our point of view. So to now change the rules while cowboy racing is mid-process with its permitting presents many challenges. And as for those of you who work in private industry know, businesses need certainty. Cowboy racing is no different. We need to feel like we're being treated fairly and just like our competitors. And House Bill 85, in our view, is the opposite of that. As expressed in the gaming study, we know more work needs to be done on Wyoming's gaming laws. And as we solidify our place in this market, we hope to be part of those solutions. So we ask, before this committee adopts legislation on these difficult issues, and I think we always have this question, is it ready for prime time? You've seen a list of amendments. We have our list of amendments. I mean, ask yourself, is this bill ready for prime time? Perhaps it's time to take a step back and gather additional information to ensure that you've considered all relevant issues from all stakeholders. And so we want to be partners with you in that effort. We have experts who can tell you how other states tackle sustainable growth in gaming. And we encourage this committee to visit with regulators in other states similar to Wyoming to understand how their version of a mileage rule works, because they are working. So though all we have asked the committee to take a pause, if the committee instead decides to move forward, we would respectfully ask your thoughtful approval of all of the 3 amendments which we've provided for you today. With that, Mr. Chairman, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Ellis, just educate us, I guess. So this facility is 25 miles or 15 miles outside of Cheyenne in the county. But you referenced you're waiting on city permits. Is there another facility that's within the city limits, or how does this work?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harshman, old habit. So the
I'm not that
process,
old yet, Mr.
you know, to
Chairman.
kind of break it out, I know, only the young ones get
Sorry.
to do
No,
that,
I know,
right?
and you're younger than me.
So there's been some thought in how Wyoming first crafted this gaming laws. Like, as was mentioned, it's kind of viewed as a statewide process similar to industrial siting. But when you think about how cowboy racing has been asked to approach this, we've gotten approvals from the Gaming Commission. And as we've visited with the county commission, this is a big project. There's the racetrack, which is out in the county, 10 miles outside of Cheyenne. But then we've asked for 3 gaming facilities within the city. And so when we've presented to the county commission, we've had that conversation of how that works together. Those 3 gaming facilities would provide revenue sources to support our live horse race days, to support our tracks. That's how it's intended to work. And so we'd push back a little bit on the fact that, this is viewed as a county-city thing. Everyone in the city of Cheyenne votes on county commission elections. Everyone has a voice in that process. I think when I've been in the legislature, where you see the problem is decisions being made in the county that affect the city, and the city people don't, or vice versa, excuse me, I've got that reversed. City decisions where county residents don't get a vote. So we don't see that issue here, Mr. Chairman. These are all intertwined.
So
But
just-
to answer your
just to-
question, it would be 3 gaming facilities in the city of Cheyenne, and then we've gotten our permit for outside in the county for the live horse track.
And then just so then those 3 facilities, which are part of the 6 million, I'm assuming, and the 6 million isn't just the racetrack, then it's these other, so 4 facilities really we're talking about is kind of how, I'm just trying to, and those 3 facilities in Cheyenne then would not be subject to the 100-mile rule because they're technically part of the racetrack. Is that how this works?
Chairman Byron, Representative Harshman, we haven't scratched the surface on how much it's going to cost to open these facilities. The 6 million is just the track. But to answer your question, yeah, these facilities, because they're within the 100 miles, those are our facilities.
Okay.
And they stay open.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just add, looking at the latest annual report that the Gaming Commission produces, there are 43, maybe 45 now with 2024, I don't know. But according to the most recent data, I think there are 43 gaming facilities approved in the state of Wyoming. These would be an additional 3.
Appreciate that, Ms. Ellis. Committee, we are up against time. So those on Zoom, I'm going to go ahead and let you know the bad news. We will not be taking Zoom testimony on 85. Mr. Doherty, you're more than welcome to email our committee and get us some of your info or use Ms. Ellis. But, I'm going to speak with the co-chair. Mr. Representative Jarvis, go ahead and feel free to ask a question. We're going to make a strategy on this bill because there's obviously a lot of information coming in, Mr. Rep.
Thank you, Chairman Byron. So I just have a question. If you were completely up and running and everything, and you weren't mid-process with, as you are currently, would you have any problems with this as it stands?
Thank you, Chairman Byron. Representative Jarvis, I think there are some concerns in there, and it has to do with arbitrary and capricious decision-making. We've talked with, in getting our approvals, visiting with a local elected official about one of the facilities that Cowboy Racing intends to open for the OTBs. His comment was, I really like that you're going to have restaurants in there. That's an amenity that we like to see in Cheyenne. And so you're like, okay, that's a fair thing, but there's nothing in the statute that says you can give preference or that's somehow a requirement or somehow that should sway your decision-making. Maybe that's a fair thing, but that's not written in the statute. So our concern is that, you say, well, I don't really like this proposed facility because it's a box with machines. I'd rather it have a bowling alley. I wish it had convention space. That's where we start seeing some of that arbitrary and capricious decision-making. We think a better alternative would be for cities to actually exercise some of their jurisdiction that they have right now. Another example we heard in going through these approvals was we heard someone say, well, we're thankful that one of your proposed locations is far away from the other ones, so you're not competing directly with an existing OTB that's operated by one of our competitors. Okay, so maybe that's a solution for Cheyenne. Cheyenne wants them kind of spread out throughout the community, but another community might say, actually, we want a gaming district, so they're all consolidated in one part of our town. And so all those tools are there right now, and when a city is proactive in putting that out there, then we know, like anyone wanting to enter the market can say, okay, these are the rules, this is what I need to do to check off the list. But when you have something like this, and I'll be frank, one of the proposed locations we have, you could argue is close to an elementary school, so we're working through those issues, and I would disagree that their cities and towns don't have some authority to set time limits. That's absolutely appropriate, and we've seen that in existing facilities. But right now, if you drive along Pershing, there's a gaming facility that's across the street from another, used to be a junior high, now it's used for swing space for elementary students. So that's where you see some ambiguity. What if the city were to say, well, we don't like yours because it's close to an elementary school, but then you have another facility that's literally across the street from the elementary school? That's not fair. And so to Mr. Schultz's point, as the new applicant, you wouldn't even be able to appeal that to district court the way the bill is written now. And so that's why Amendment 2 that we've asked for is, can you at least let us appeal to district court if we've been adversely grieved by our government? So Madam Chair, or Mr. Chairman, Representative Jarvis, I think we would like a seat at the table in crafting this bill. I heard Mr. Ryman say that he worked with one of the operators over the course of 18 months. This is a really competitive industry, and I can tell you that as someone who's worked on it from the business side, I've never seen an industry with sharper elbows than this one. And everyone's like clamoring for ways to get that customer to be competitive. And so we just think we have to really bring everybody together now that we've entered this market so that our voice is heard and our concerns are addressed as well.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ellis. Committee, I'm going to do something that obviously as a new chairman, I have not done yet, but hearing all this and seeing how many questions and bits of pencil we have used, without objection, and I would love if Representative Provenza corrects me here, but without objection, I would like to lay House Bill 85 back to our next meeting. Now, that next meeting is not established yet. We are not planning on meeting on adjournment like we previously scheduled because we are told we're going late, but we will have an extra meeting next week. But without objection, I would like to lay House Bill 85 back to our next meeting. Representative.
Mr. Chairman, before we do this, I just want to ask if our gaming commissioner could make himself available for next meeting, because I have a question that I think he's going to have to answer, so.
Perfect.
But I agree. I think this is a very complex bill. I think we probably need to take a little more time. I don't want to rush it, Mr. Chairman.
We got a nod from the Gaming Commission. Thank you. Representative Provenza.
Mr. Chairman, you don't need a motion. We can just not motion to move this bill, and then we just
keep
pick
working
it
it.
back up next time.
Perfect. That is what is going to happen on House Bill 85. We can get together, and I will say that it sounds like we need to have well, maybe we don't, but parties in the room need to have a greater discussion between now and our next meeting. And if we can't get there, we will figure out what to do as a committee.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification, when you start back up, do you want us back at the table so you got your members
When
can
we start
continue to
back
question
up,
us?
I want you in the room.
Okay, well, we'll be in the room. I just didn't know. if you
Yeah,
want
we
us
just
at the
don't know
table
when
right
that'll
away.
be yet. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Folks, we have a lot of people that have come a long ways to testify in House Bill 162. I want the bringer of the bill, Representative Davis, to sneak up here without going into details. We have got to open this up for quickly for testimony for those that are here opposed. Who has traveled today to testify on House Bill 162? Please raise your hand. Okay, well, everyone gets about 1 minute. Representative Davis, do you need to explain the bill? We've worked this bill. We've talked about this bill. We have about 15 minutes to get back upstairs.
Mr. Chairman, that last bill was not as intense as this bill is. So with that, I would respectfully ask for until the next meeting to present this.
Okay, and
It would be better for.
I would like to
because this
take
is a-
testimony for folks that drove across the state today.
That would be fine. Thank you.
Or flew here, but I am gonna limit it. And I understand there's a number of them. If they could send 1 or 2 representatives up, I want to be very respectful. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate it. But we will hear that bill because of its complex nature early next week, Representative Davis. Please come on up. And then if you are here to testify in favor of this House Bill 162, please backfill the chairs behind them. And those online, we will be continuing this discussion on both these bills at our next meeting, which is to be determined. Go ahead and introduce yourself and know that we are at, we're happy to talk to you afterwards, but we are at 2:23 and we're gonna be upstairs in 10 or 15 minutes.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairman Byron and members of the committee. Thank you today for your time. And I just want to speak on behalf of.
Can you introduce yourself and who you're representing?
Keenan Grosbeck, Northern Arapahoe Business Council.
Thank you.
And I'll get straight to the point, In the early 2000s, the Northern Arapahoe Business Council approached the state of Wyoming to begin negotiations for tribal gaming compact under the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. Negotiations between the Northern Arapahoe tribe ultimately failed, and tribe sought remedy in the United States District Court of the District of Wyoming. February 6, 2002, the district court found that the state of Wyoming had failed to negotiate with the tribe in good faith. The decisions of the court was appealed to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, who once again ruled in favor of the tribe. In September 2005, the Secretary of Interior issued secretarial procedures to the Northern Arapahoe tribe to operate Class 3 Vegas-style casino gaming. The tribe has been operating casino gaming for nearly 20 years. In 2006, the state of Wyoming negotiated and ratified a gaming compact with the Eastern Shoshone tribe, allowing them to operate casino gaming. Since the issuance of the secretarial procedures, the Northern Arapahoe tribe has successfully operated multiple casinos within the state of Wyoming, created hundreds of jobs, and generated millions of dollars in economic impact. The Northern Arapahoe tribe lacks a tax base to generate revenue to fund the tribal government, and revenues derived from casino gaming are used to support the tribal programs and social services for tribal members. Over the last few years, gaming has expanded within the state. This expansion has resulted in a decline in revenue at the tribe's casino. We have seen the expansion of skills games, HHR, sports betting, and now there is a desire to legalize interactive gaming, casino gaming in the state. This bill will allow Wyoming residents to play the full gambit of Vegas-style casino games 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from their phone, computer, or tablet without the creation of jobs or economic impact that traditional brick-and-mortar casinos create. The potential operators are out of the state, national companies who, instead of invest in Wyoming, will be funneling profits and their money out of state. Wyoming dollars need to stay in Wyoming. As the chairman of Northern Arapahoe tribe, I am asking you all for a no vote on this bill.
Really appreciate those comments. Let's go ahead, and we're at 2:25, is about 4 minutes, and I thank you for driving down here. As you know, we will continue this conversation sometime next week. I'll work with the committee to figure out when that first meeting will be. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please, and comment on House Bill 162.
Hello, my name's Clinton Glick, and I'm a member of the Shoshone Business Council. And I'm against the bill, and I'm asking that you guys vote no on the bill. it hinders our revenue, which comes in to help us so that we could better our communities. If it's opened up across the state for Class 3 gaming, then I think that will cut our revenue down significantly where we use a lot of this revenue to better our tribal governments. We try to utilize a lot of it for resiliency so that we can protect ourselves and make sure that our families and communities keep growing in a proper manner. Thank you.
Mr. Glick, thank you for driving down here today and hearing your testimony.
I'm Claire Johnson. I'm the attorney for the Northern Arapaho Tribe. Because we're really short on time, I'm just going to bullet point this super fast. So basically, the tribe has multiple regulatory concerns within the bill. One, that there's a lack of oversight and regulation. We want to see more language related to cybersecurity, recognition of minors on the platform, geolocation to geofence out the Wind River Reservation in compliance with federal law. We would like to see more stringent and consistent licensing standards in the state, as was recommended in the Spectrum Gaming Report. We'd like to see higher rates of, well, not higher rates of money laundering, but we'd like to see more enforcement of anti-money laundering in compliance with Title 31. We also have to recognize that online gaming, because of the 24/7 availability of it, it's going to increase addiction. And we have to think about what's that going to do to families and individuals in Wyoming, especially when they'll be allowed to game on a credit card. Sorry, but I think that's a pretty terrible thing to do to people. We would also like to see parity between the tax amounts of all the others, where we see 10% in sports betting, we see basically 20% in HHR, and now 16% in this bill. Our bills need to have parity in all the different types of gaming offered throughout the state of Wyoming.
Ms. Johnson, thank you. I would appreciate if you did get that email to me, the bullet points. I can share with the committee and we can work with our secretary. Thank you for those comments. Anyone else today that traveled here in opposition that does not live in Cheyenne? We will have a continuation of this meeting early next week. Okay, those folks that have traveled here in support of House Bill 162, I'd welcome your comments now. Welcome, Mr. Pickard. Please introduce yourself to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dave Pickard. Although I only traveled a couple miles, what I'd like to share with the committee is that the folks that I have that traveled will be here at your next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard. That's great news. Did not want to put anyone out with pending storms and long distances. All right, well, for the committee, it is 2:29. So Representative Davis, I tried to sneak this through.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I do appreciate you guys postponing this till the next available because this will be in-depth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing that I never opened public comment on that one, we didn't really get the bill moving. We're just gonna go ahead and adjourn. Committee, I checked some schedules and it looks like we have Monday morning open. Does anyone have a conflict Monday morning besides the morning? Okay, I will work with each of you individually, but we have a lot of work to do. And I will work with our good secretaries and staff. And for those out there, we will be meeting at 8 a.m. somewhere Monday morning. I'll have that announcement hopefully by the end of the day to continue both these bills and begin to work a few more. So really appreciate everyone coming and see you upstairs.